Gaming Vault presents 15 new features that you may not know about Final Fantasy 15.
We have a lot to talk about, so without wasting your time, let us begin right away.
Realistic monster behavior. The monsters in Final Fantasy 15 were created to be as realistic as possible. The monsters which appear on the world map have realistic behavior. For instance, the larger ones will prey on the smaller ones. Coupled with the game's other systems such as dynamic weather and time cycles, we get the most realistic behaving monsters in the history of this franchise so far. VR mode is additional to the main game. At E3 this year, a VR mode was announced for Final Fantasy 15 compatible with the PSVR headset. However, the entire game will not be playable in VR. Rather, the VR mode will be an addition to the main game. Director Hajime Tabata also confirmed that the VR mode's development did not take up a whole lot of development resources or manpower, so we can expect it to be ancillary to the main experience at best. Dynamic weather system. Much like, well, every other open world game in the last few years, Final Fantasy 15 will feature a world that is affected by a dynamic in-game weather cycle. Rain, fog and storms will all be seen in full glory across the landscapes of Eos, and all these will have a lot more than just visual impact. For instance, the weather will also determine how your magic spells affects the weather, so expect your lightning-based spells to be stronger in the rain and more of the like. DayNight Cycle. The day and night cycle in Final Fantasy 15 will have a very real impact on the way you play. The types of enemies you encounter will change depending on what time of day it is. Enemy types, the number of enemies you come across and how strong these enemies will all be affected by the day and night cycle. Apart from that, characters who do not sleep will be significantly weaker during combat. Which brings us to camping. Camping is going to be an integral part of Final Fantasy 15. Camping during the night is vital for characters to keep up their strength during combat, and characters that are short on sleep will perform significantly worse during combat. What's more, you can only level up while you are camping. During exploration, the campsite serves as a base camp for you, allowing you to cook using the ingredients you've collected, and you can return to activated camp anytime you want. Controlling your airship. Airships have long been a mainstay in the Final Fantasy series, but Final Fantasy 15 puts a very different spin on the concept. We've all seen the car that we'll be able to drive in Final Fantasy 15 by now, or the Regalia as it's called. But what's interesting is that later on in the game it can be modified to become an airship, and players will be able to control the vehicle in both its forms. You'll be able to drive across the roads and fly over them, whichever one you choose. Minigames. Considering just how massive and diverse Final Fantasy 15's world is going to be, it goes without saying that there'll be a lot of side activities for players to take part in, and a lot of them will entail minigames, Zelda style. Of course, Final Fantasy as a series has had a long history and tradition of multiple minigames and side activities for the players to engage in, such as fishing, so Final Fantasy 15 is really only just returning to the norm here. Monster collection. Fans of Final Fantasy have long been familiar with summoning monsters in the midst of battle to acquire their skills. The system was successfully used in Final Fantasy X, for example, and it's making a return here in Final Fantasy 15. These monsters, called Arcanians in the game, are divided into classes and a ranking system and include summons such as the Titan and the Levian. However, before they can be used by the player, they have to be acquired through several different ways, the most common being through defeating them in combat, similar to what we've seen in games such as Pokemon or Persona. Wait mode. Final Fantasy 15 puts an interesting spin on its combat system in the form of the new wait mode. Reminiscent of the turn-based and active turn-based combat systems of the earlier games in the series, the wait mode allows players to freeze time and select targets for their attacks, move their units, or to further strategize. Of course, this isn't anything new to the RPG genre as a whole, but it's something that should lend the combat in Final Fantasy 15 another interesting layer. Dynamic combat. Final Fantasy 15 marks the series' first. It is the first time that the game will not have some variation of turn-based combat, but will instead switch over to true real-time action-based gameplay. This changes a lot. Combat will now be more about quick reflexes and trying to figure out enemy attack patterns in real time than the relatively more sedate fares of the previous games. This will definitely be a major and dramatic change to how Final Fantasy is played. Return of the Gambit system. The Gambit system, introduced in Final Fantasy XIII back in 2010, was a well-received system. While it isn't making a proper comeback in Final Fantasy XV, the game's combat is going to return some of the mechanics that were central to the system. Players will be able to set predetermined actions to characters to judge their combat behaviour, while they will also be able to pull menus in the middle of combat to change their actions and assign new commands. Other actions, on the other hand, such as healing party members, will be triggered contextually. Meal buffs. As has already been pointed out earlier in this feature, players will be able to cook meals in their camps using the ingredients they have gathered, either through exploration or by purchasing them in towns. These meals will give characters status buffs, obviously, but what's interesting is that as time wears on, in conjunction with the aforementioned day and night cycle, these said buffs will gradually wear off, and players will have to cook and consume new meals to renew them. Fast travel. When you have a massive open world, you naturally need a way to quickly travel across it. Thankfully, it looks like Final Fantasy 15 will do well on this front. Players will be able to fast travel to any camp that they have previously set up, as we've already talked about, letting them transport through the map in a jiffy. Luminess Engine. Final Fantasy 15 is the first and quite possibly the last game that will be developed using the Luminess Engine. The Luminess Engine was created specifically for Square Enix's in-house efforts, but quite frankly, it seems to be a bit of a mess. It appears that apart from this game, no other Square title is going to be using this engine. Dragon Quest XIII and most notably Kingdom Hearts 3 have already switched to using the Unreal Engine 4. 5 million polygons per scene. That doesn't, however, mean that the Luminous Engine isn't going to serve Final Fantasy 15 well. Thanks to the engine, RealTime Scenes in Final Fantasy 15 will have 5 million on-screen polygons per scene, with character models being made up of up to 1,000 polygons each. That's impressive, to say the least. To give you a bit more of an idea of just how impressive this is going to be, on a technical level, each character will use 30 megabytes of texture data alone, with up to 10 levels of detail.
Like this video? Why not give us a like and subscribe? We try and upload amazing videos almost every single day. Thank you for watching this video, and we'll see you on the next one.